In the ancient land of Canaan, there lived a young man named Joseph, the 11th son of Jacob. Joseph was Jacob's favorite son, born to him in his old age by his beloved wife Rachel. To show his special love for Joseph, Jacob gave him an exquisite coat of many colors. This lavish gift made Joseph stand out and fueled the jealousy and resentment of his older brothers. Joseph, who was blessed with the ability to interpret dreams, had two significant dreams that further strained his relationship with his brothers. In the first dream, Joseph and his brothers were binding sheaves of grain in the field. Suddenly, Joseph's sheaf rose and stood upright, while the sheaves of his brothers gathered around and bowed down to it. In the second dream, the sun, moon, and 11 stars bowed down to Joseph. When Joseph shared these dreams with his family, his brother's envy turned to hatred, and even his father rebuked him. One day, Jacob sent Joseph to check on his brothers, who were grazing their flocks near Shechem. As Joseph approached, his brothers saw an opportunity to rid themselves of their dreamer. They plotted to kill him and throw him into a cistern, but Reuben, the eldest brother, intervened, suggesting they throw him into the cistern without harming him, intending to rescue Joseph later. When Joseph arrived, his brothers stripped him of his beautiful coat and threw him into an empty cistern. As they sat down to eat, a caravan of Ishmaelite traders came by on their way to Egypt. Judah, another brother, suggested they sell Joseph to the traders instead of killing him, and the others agreed. They sold Joseph for 20 pieces of silver, and he was taken to Egypt as a slave. To cover up their deed, the brothers dipped Joseph's coat in goat's blood and presented it to Jacob. Devastated, Jacob believed a wild animal had killed his beloved son. He mourned deeply, refusing to be comforted. Meanwhile, in Egypt, Joseph was sold to Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh and captain of the guard. Despite his dire circumstances, Joseph remained faithful to God, and the Lord blessed everything he did. Potiphar noticed Joseph's exceptional abilities and put him in charge of his household, and the household prospered under Joseph's management. However, Joseph's troubles were far from over. Potiphar's wife found Joseph attractive and tried to seduce him. When Joseph refused her advances, she falsely accused him of trying to assault her, and Potiphar had him thrown into prison. But even in prison, God was with Joseph. He found favor with the prison warden, who put him in charge of all the prisoners and the prison's operations. While in prison, Joseph interpreted the dreams of two of Pharaoh's officials, the cupbearer and the baker, who had been imprisoned. The cupbearer's dream foretold his restoration to his position, while the baker's dream predicted his execution. Joseph's interpretations proved accurate, but the cupbearer forgot about Joseph after being restored to his position. 2 years later, Pharaoh himself had two troubling dreams that none of his magicians or wise men could interpret. The cupbearer then remembered Joseph and told Pharaoh about his ability to interpret dreams. Pharaoh summoned Joseph, and with God's help, Joseph interpreted the dreams, predicting 7 years of abundance followed by 7 years of severe famine. Impressed by Joseph's wisdom, Pharaoh appointed him as the second in command of Egypt, placing him in charge of preparing for the impending famine. Under Joseph's leadership, Egypt stored vast quantities of grain during the 7 years of abundance. When the famine struck, it affected not only Egypt, but also the surrounding regions, including Canaan. Jacob sent his sons to Egypt to buy grain, and they unknowingly came before Joseph. Recognizing his brothers, but concealing his identity, Joseph tested them to see if they had changed. After a series of interactions and emotional confrontations, Joseph revealed his identity to his brothers. Overwhelmed with emotion, he forgave them, saying, "You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives." He invited his entire family to live in Egypt, where they would be provided for during the remaining years of famine. The story of Joseph and the coat of many colors is a powerful testament to the faithfulness of God, the power of forgiveness, and the fulfillment of dreams. It shows how even in the midst of betrayal and suffering, God's plan prevails, turning trials into triumphs and bringing restoration and reconciliation.